This is how I would build a dominant fantasy football team from every single draft spot. Before we get into it, grab your coffee, grab your energy drink. We got a white monster. Take a sip and let's jump into it. Starting with picks 1 through 4, there can be a lot of pressure when you're drafting in this range, or even if you have the 101. Obviously, there's so many good options. You don't know who to take. Well, this is a strategy that I found is the best when drafting in this 1 to 4 range. The players that you want to avoid, the values that you need to take advantage of, the guys that you want to target at all costs. Let's jump into it. So if you have a pick 1 through 4, let's go over it. In round 1, I suggest you draft an elite wide receiver, whether that's CeeDee Lamb, whether that's Tyreek Hill, Ja'Marr Chase, or Amon-Ra St. Brown. Not saying you take Amon-Ra St. Brown first, but 1 to 4, one of these guys you should take. I'm a little worried about Justin Jefferson now with J.J. McCarthy out. Sam Darnold hasn't been a good quarterback his entire career. Why do we think it's going to change now? I do really like the Vikings. I do like their system. I think Jefferson is going to be a nice wide receiver this year. I just don't think he has that wide receiver 1 overall ceiling that we're looking for when we're drafting in this spot. And I will note, before we go any further, I have no problem taking Bijan or Breece, whether that's number 1 overall or somewhere in the top 4. You can absolutely take those running backs. I'm giving you the keys. If you need a running back, if you want a running back, take one of those 2 guys. I'm fading Christian McCaffrey at cost. If you want to know why, comment down below, but we don't have time to get into that right now, unfortunately. In round 2, so let's say you took an elite wide receiver, take your RB1. Again, when I'm designing this breakdown for you guys, I'm looking at who I think is going to be available in round 2, who I think is going to be available in round 3. I suggest you do that as well for the platform that you draft on. I can't cover every single ADP from every single different platform. We're using Sleeper here because they tend to be the closest to consensus. And in round 2, the running back value is absolutely incredible. De'Von Achane, if he's available, coming back around, he's my pick. I love Derrick Henry. ETN and Jacobs are strong options. The reason why I like to go running back here is because the tier of wide receivers, the Marvin Harrison Jr., the Drake London, Chris Olave, all those guys are likely gone. If one of those guys falls, take them. If not, take one of those 4 running backs. Remember, the best way to make this process easier is to plan ahead as much as you can, not by targeting certain players, by looking at positions. Where's the value? In round 2, the value is incredible for running backs for this example, but do mock drafts on the platform that you're drafting on. Make sure it's the same for your specific situation. Ideally, try to plan out the first 3 rounds of what positions you're going to take based on preference and based on value. So this is a perfect example. Let's say you would have went running back in round 1, and then in round 2 you go running back again, and then in round 3 you have not so great wide receiver options. That's not a good plan. So look at the ADPs. We're going off Sleeper, but if you're on a different platform, do mock drafts. See who's going to be available and have some sort of a plan. Yes, it's important to be adaptable in the moment. The draft can be very unpredictable. Things can change. Players can fall in your lap. This is a general blueprint. You don't have to follow it to a T, but I think this is the smartest rule of thumb for this spot. So we went wide receiver in round 1. We went running back in round 2 because of the tremendous value. So in round 3, on that turn back around, if Pacheco, De'Von Achane, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, or Travis Etienne, if any of those guys are still there, I am taking my second running back. So you could potentially have CeeDee Lamb, De'Von Achane, and Isaiah Pacheco. I love that build. Now, I've preached in previous videos that I prefer to go wide receiver heavy after the first 3 rounds, come away with 2 wide receivers and 1 running back, but I understand that that strategy isn't bulletproof and it doesn't work for every single pick. In this range, with these ADPs, with the value that I'm seeing, wide receiver, running back is a phenomenal strategy here. Get your running back sealed up, and then you can just hammer the wide receiver position. But one thing to keep in mind, running backs do carry a lot of variables. They're very volatile, and they are prone to the most injuries. So that is one of my reasons why I do prefer to just take as many wide receivers as possible. But the way the board fell and the way the values were just sitting right there, I couldn't pass up on taking some of these stud running backs in round 2, in round 3. If those running backs aren't available in round 3, I have no problem reaching for Jalen Waddle or Deebo Samuel if Brandon Ayuk gets traded. So I'm assuming by the time you guys are having your redraft leagues, we should hopefully know if Brandon Ayuk is going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler or a 49er. Now, let's say those running back values are gone. Let's say Jalen Waddle is gone, or you don't want to reach for a wide receiver, and let's say Brandon Ayuk is a 49er. I don't love Deebo then. I don't really have a problem going elite quarterback here. I know in the fantasy community, drafting a quarterback early is like such a frowned upon thing. I don't really get it because some people have league settings where you get bonuses at 350 passing yards, 450 passing yards. So this is where it's really important to know your league, to know your scoring structure. And if quarterbacks are a little bit highly favored, let's say it's 6 points for a touchdown pass, I have no problem drafting Jalen Hurts, drafting CJ Stroud, whoever is available, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. I don't have a problem with it. Do I love it? Is it the strategy that I use often? No. But if those running backs are gone, you don't want to reach for a wide receiver, and next round, round 4, is the wide receiver gold mine, then you could start wide receiver, running back, quarterback, and then go wide receiver again in round 4. That is an option. Before we move on to round 4, the wide receivers that I don't like their values. Not saying I don't think they're going to have nice fantasy seasons. I just don't like drafting them in this range. Mike Evans, who I think will see a little bit of a dip. When Dave Canale's gone, year older, I don't really think Baker Mayfield is that very good of a quarterback. I think he's going to kind of regress back to the mean as well. Nico Collins, I prefer to take Tank Dell 2 to 3 rounds later. And Stephon Diggs, another Houston wide receiver, completely fitting Stephon. Don't want him anywhere this year. He's the wide receiver 3 on this Houston team. He showed last year he couldn't even get it done with Josh Allen. We won't go further on that, but those are the wide receivers going in this range that I just don't want to touch at this spot here. All right, in round 4, like I said, this is the wide receiver gold mine. There is so many insane options in round 4 and even in round 5, which is why I'm totally fine if you do start wide receiver, running back. Get those running backs done with. Get your 2 running backs and then just go wide receiver. Let's not get ahead of myself here, but that's kind of the outlook. That's really what I like if you're picking in this 1 to 4 range in 12-team leagues. So let's go through it. In round 4, the options here: Cooper Kupp, who I think is going to have a resurgence of a season; DK Metcalf, who I love with new offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb; Devontae Smith, who I love with new offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. These guys have crazy upside in this range. If Jalen Waddle is still here, Waddle is another strong option. If you want to pivot to tight end, which if Trey McBride's on the board, I have no problem going McBride here and then going wide receiver in round 5. So if he is on the board, go tight end. Totally fine with that. If you are someone that likes to wait on tight end, we have some tight end values coming up in a couple rounds. So take a look at this roster after your first 4 picks. This is what it could look like. CeeDee Lamb, Devon Achane, Isaiah Pacheco, and DK Metcalf could be your first 4 picks potentially. I know I give you other options of taking a quarterback or taking a tight end. This is one of my favorite builds. CeeDee Lamb, Devon Achane, Isaiah Pacheco, and DK Metcalf is a crazy start. Comment down below what you think of this team right now. If you're picking 1 through 4, let me know. I think this is absolutely crazy, and we're just starting to get into round 5, so buckle up. In round 5, like I said, another incredible spot to take a wide receiver. Mr. Nathaniel Tank Dell is just waiting to be drafted. I think he's going to lead this Houston wide receiver core in fantasy points per game. And then Zay Flowers, who's the wide receiver 1 on a really good Baltimore offense, the second target in a condensed passing attack. Zay Flowers, another phenomenal pick. If you want to go running back, if you haven't secured your RB2 and you just want to get that over with, I think Kenneth Walker is going to be a league winner this year. You could also go Alvin Kamara, or if you want Dalton Kincaid, he's going to be available here most likely. You can take him as well. I prefer to go wide receiver, but it's totally up to you depending on the build that you've had so far. All right, in round 6, I like to call this best available or go target a value or a need. So depending on what your team still needs, some of my favorite targets here are Joe Burrow, Ramondre Stevenson is going to have a big year, Rashee Rice, Jaden Reed. I think Stevenson is wildly underrated. I think he's going to be a top 12, top 15 fantasy running back. But take whatever position you need or take the best value available in round 6. In round 7, ideally, it's the best spot to draft a quarterback. Top 2 targets for me, Kyler Murray, Jordan Love. If you did take Burrow, which I have no problem with, you could go Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, or if you really want to try to hit that home run, go Xavier Worthy, who I think is going to have a phenomenal rookie year, and a lot of people are sleeping on him. And then in round 8, chase upside. I don't care if they're rookies, you guys. I don't care if they're coming off a torn ACL. Chase upside. Chase guys that in November, December could set your team on fire and send you straight to the championship game. Those guys for me in this range, Jonathan Brooks, Deontay Johnson, Javonte Williams, Brian Thomas Jr. If Ladd McConkey's here, take him. But one of my most favorite tight end values this year is Jake Ferguson. If you want to solidify your tight end, if you waited on taking a tight end, take Ferguson, who's the number 2 target in what's going to be a really good Cowboys offense behind CeeDee Lamb. I think Ferguson has top 5 upside at the position. In round 9, these are where you go after these breakout wide receivers that people are sleeping on. Those 2 guys for me, Jackson Smith-Njigba, gonna have a huge year. I could talk all day about why, but we don't have time, unfortunately, in this video. Christian Watson, another one of my guys who I think is gonna explode. If you need a running back, Jaylen Warren, who's gonna be on a run-heavy Steelers offense, or Tajay Spears, who I think is the better running back in Tennessee. And in round 10, keep chasing that upside. Brian Robinson Jr., Chase Brown, Blake Corum, if anything happens to Kyren, or Jaden Daniels. And then even farther down, don't leave your draft. Rounds 13, 14, without drafting Rico Dowdle. So this is what your team could look like. Quarterback 1 is Kyler Murray. Your 2 running backs are Achane and Pacheco. That's filthy. Then your wide receiver 1 is CeeDee Lamb, paired with Tank Dell, paired with DK Metcalf, paired with Christian Watson. Your tight end is Jake Ferguson. You have Rashee Rice at the flex, Deontay Johnson at the flex. This team is loaded from the start to the end. This is one of my favorite builds from this pick. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about the roster below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think about this format and anything else you would like to ask or say. I'd appreciate it down below. All right, now picks 5 through 8. This is the strategy that I would use, the players that I would draft. I love taking Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson in round 1, solidify your elite running back, and then build around them in round 2 when it comes back around. I love pairing an elite running back with Drake London, Marvin Harrison Jr. If you do go wide receiver in round 1, I have no problem taking Jamar Chase or Amon-Ra St. Brown, but you have to then take a running back. And you got to reach for Devon Achane or take ETN or Kyren, who just don't get me as excited. That's why I prefer to start with an elite running back and then go wide receiver in round 2. But I think you have to leave the first 3 rounds here with at least 1 elite running back and then preferably 2 elite wide receivers, depending on how the board falls. What I found here to be the smartest move based on sleeper ADPs. So if you're drafting on ESPN, Yahoo, or NFL, wherever it may be, make sure you're doing mock drafts to understand what values, what positions are going to be available when. I preach this in all my videos, but the first 3 rounds, you should have an idea of what positions are available. Not specific players, but what positions you want to target in said rounds. Because if you get to a spot where you start with 2 running backs and then you get to round 3 and you hate the wide receiver value, then you have to wait another round to take your wide receiver 1. I just don't love that. There's a lot of variables as well with running backs, more risk involved. For this build, I prefer to go running back in round 1 and then wide receiver. So my ideal first 3 picks would be Breece Hall, Drake London, or Marvin Harrison Jr., who's ever available, and then Jalen Waddle. If you don't like the value that's available in round 3, I don't really have a problem with going for an elite quarterback in Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes. I know there's this, in the fantasy community, no one wants to take a quarterback early, and I typically am not that guy. But if the board falls this way where you don't like the wide receiver options, you don't want to reach for a player, I have no problem taking an elite quarterback here. You could start elite wide receiver, elite running back, and then elite quarterback. That's not a bad build. It's not what I prefer, but it's not a horrible situation. If you do go elite wide receiver in round 1 and you don't like the running back value on the way back in round 2, I have no problem reaching for Devon Achane here, who I think is just going to absolutely explode. I don't get the hate that this guy's been getting. People are going to miss out on a league winner if you don't draft Achane. So for me personally, the way I prefer to start this draft, if I had to pick between 5 and 8 in a 12-man league, is just get that elite running back, get that Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson, and then in round 2, take an elite wide receiver, Drake London, Marvin Harrison Jr. Chris Olave is kind of a tier down from those two guys, but I don't mind him here as well. And then in round 3, take another wide receiver, Jalen Waddle. Debo I like here if Ayuk gets traded. If Chris Olave fell, I like him here as well. You could go elite quarterback, though. That is an option at this spot. Now in round 4 is the wide receiver gold mine. You got to take a wide receiver at this spot in most leagues, whether it's 10 or 12 man. There's just so much good value here. It's hard to pass up on. Cooper Kupp is sitting there. DK Metcalf, Devontae Smith. Let's say you started your draft running back and then wide receiver. I have no problem taking another wide receiver here. If that's not really your style, if you'd like to address a different position, go tight end, get Trey McBride or Mark Andrews, or go elite quarterback and take CJ Stroud. So in round 5, we hope and pray that Tank Dell is there. If we took CJ Stroud, heck, we hope and pray Tank Dell is there regardless if we have CJ Stroud or not on our team. Dell is going to break out this year. If you can't get him, other strong options, Zay Flowers, who I think is being extremely slept on. I don't really understand it. And Kenneth Walker, who I think is going to have a huge breakout season. I think he's going to be the workhorse back for Seattle in this range. If you want to go tight end, you could also go Kyle Pitts here, who I think is going to have a career year. I like to give you guys options. I'm not just going to say, okay, take this guy, because I understand every league is different, all different ADPs based on what platform you're drafting on. So I like to give you different scenarios, and all the scenarios that I'm giving you, I think are quality strategies, quality ways to attack your draft. If you have picks 5 through 8 in a 12-man league, let me know in the comment section if you guys are liking this advice. I'm really trying to give advice that is catered specifically to you guys in your draft. I don't want to give this generic advice. I want to go as narrow and as in-depth as possible because I want to help you guys win your league more than anything. In round 6, if you waited to take your RB2, which isn't a bad strategy, because if you listen to my original plan, which is taking Breece Hall or Bijan in round 1, and then you load up on wide receivers, maybe mixing an elite quarterback, which I have no problem with, round 6 is a phenomenal time to take your RB2, which is going to be James Conner, David Montgomery, or Ramondre Stevenson. If I had to choose between the three, Stevenson and Conner are my two favorites. I do think Montgomery has league-winning upside. If Gibbs re-injures that hamstring or goes down towards the end of the year, Montgomery could take you to the championship. And if you waited on quarterback and want to get that out of the way, Joe Burrow is your guy. Burrow is going to remind people this year why he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. If you went Jamar Chase in round 1, take Joe Burrow in round 6. Those two guys are going to feed families this year. They're going to have an incredible year. I cannot wait to watch Burrow and Chase. So that is an option for you as well. I apologize if I'm starting to lose my voice. I am going through every single draft spot. So this is the second section. So I've been talking a while, but I love this. I appreciate all your guys' support and everything you've done for the channel so far. So I don't care if I'm losing my voice because I'm having fun and I hope I'm helping you guys out. In round 7, you most likely have a very strong core at this point. If you don't have a quarterback, this is the spot to do so. Grab Kyler Murray or Jordan Love. Both guys are exploding this year. If you have a quarterback, chase upside with Xavier Worthy. Najee Harris is a nice option. Chris Godwin. Calvin Ridley, who could be this year's Mike Evans. On to round 8, continue to chase upside. A lot of these guys are going to be rookies. And some rookies are going to hit, some are not. I like these guys. Go after Ladd McConkey, who's the wide receiver 1 in LA. Jonathan Brooks, who's going to be a menace on the final stretch of the fantasy season. Deontay Johnson, you could go here. Brian Thomas Jr. for Jacksonville, the rookie wide receiver. or take your tight end 1. My favorite tight end value in all fantasy drafts this year is Jake Ferguson, who I think is going to have a breakout campaign. In round 9, in every draft that I do, Jackson Smith-Njigba and Christian Watson are the 2 guys in this range that you want. If you can't get either of them, take Jaylen Warren, who is top 5 upside if anything were to ever happen to Najee Harris. And in round 10, what do? Continue to chase upside with Brian Robinson Jr., who I think is going to be the workhorse back in Washington, Chase Brown, who is the best back in Cincinnati, Blake Corum, and Jaden Daniels, who's an incredible quarterback value if you like to wait. So this is what your final roster could look like. CJ Stroud at quarterback, Breece Hall, James Conner, paired with Marvin Harrison Jr., Jalen Waddle, Tank Dell, Christian Watson. We have Jake Ferguson at tight end and Brian Robinson Jr. at the flex. This team is filthy. Let me know in the comment section below if you're going to try to make your team look similar to this. Let me know things you would change, players you prefer to draft, different strategies you think you people who are drafting in this range should implement. Help everyone out in the comment section, and let's win some leagues this year. And to my favorite people, the people who are at the end of the draft, picks 9 to 12, not the best spot necessarily, but I have found the way to make your team dominant from this range. We're going to do it together. We're going to work through some of the issues. We're going to talk it over, and we're going to make your team looking chef's kiss. So, round 1 can be tricky. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of teardrops here. We don't necessarily know who's going to be available, right? Because we're at the end of the draft. We get everyone else's scraps. Kind of stinks. But it doesn't, because round 2 comes very fast and you can get another quality player. This is what I like to do. In round 1, if Breece Hall or Bijan Robinson somehow drops, it's unlikely that they will fall. But if they fall, you're taking one of those 2 elite running backs, no question. Now, if they're not there, things can get a little bit trickier, because you're likely going to have A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Jahmyr Gibbs, who's going to be fine for week 1. So we're not going to write off Gibbs whatsoever. Hamstring isn't great, but he's young. That's good. He's going to heal properly. He should be fine. I know he's had a couple hamstring injuries in the last year, which isn't ideal, but I do think Jahmyr will be okay. He had a hamstring injury last season. He missed 2 games and then was electric the rest of the year. I want to pause and just say, I apologize if I'm losing my voice, but my passion is still here. This is the end of the video. You guys are the last picks. I've been doing this all the way through, all the way straight through. This video could be 30 minutes, but I'm going to put timestamps so you can find your pick. I love you guys, so let's keep grinding. So here we go. I'm fading Puka in round 1 at cost. He's just not for me. I think Cooper Kupp is going to have a resurgence of a year, so I don't really like Puka. So in round 1, like I said, my top picks are A.J. Brown, who I love this year with Kellen Moore. He is going to get back to elite status after a rough second half of last season. Jahmyr Gibbs is still a good option. I think Garrett Wilson, out of those 3 guys, has the highest ceiling with Aaron Rodgers, even though, yes, there is some risk involved with a 40-year-old Rodgers, with an offensive line that always seems to get hurt. There's some risk, but the upside is too good to pass up on. I will say right off the bat, if you have the 12th pick, I don't love going RB. I don't mind it. I just don't love it. Like, if you went Saquon, JT, it sounds good, but it's also pretty scary to me, because I'm really worried about JT's touchdown equity with a healthy Anthony Richardson. I think he could get sniped on a lot of goal line touchdowns. Running quarterbacks historically don't check it down to the running back, so he can miss out on touchdowns and receptions, which is the best way to score fantasy points. So I'm kind of worried about JT, which is why I prefer to go, if you have the options, to go wide receiver in round 1, and then Saquon or JT or Kyren in round 2. I prefer Saquon first, then it's really close between JT and Kyren, honestly. I might go Kyren over JT, as much as I am worried about Kyren. I might actually do it that way. So you can go 2 running backs. You just have to understand the variance with running backs and the injury risk. They're a lot more likely to get hurt than a wide receiver is. So if you go 2 running backs with your first 2 rounds, trying to build your team around that, and one gets hurt, it could be detrimental. Yes, anyone can get hurt. Any position can get hurt. But running backs' chances are just higher. That's just a fact. Like, if you go running back in round 1, let's say you get Gibbs, I have no problem reaching on Drake London. Like, I just want you to get 1 wide receiver, 1 running back through the first 2 rounds, ideally. If you can't help it, if a guy falls to you, go 2 running backs. But I wouldn't go wide receiver here either. I think you need to get a running back and a wide receiver because you have to wait so long to pick in round 3 that ideally you get 1 of each position. I'm saying ideally a lot, but get 1 of each position because of how long you have to wait, especially if you're at the 112 and have to wait 24 more picks until you pick again. The running back options are going to be scarce, right? So, which is why I understand the argument of going running back. I'm fine with it. It's just, it's a little worrisome. You can do it though. So in round 3, based on how your build has went so far, these are my top options. If Isaiah Pacheco falls to you, you're taking him unless you started with 2 running backs. I think Pacheco has top 5 upside this year. He's going to be the workhorse on arguably the best offense in football. Why would you not want that player, right? Pacheco's a no-brainer. Jalen Waddle, my second favorite target, coming back around in round 3. If both guys are gone, I don't mind DJ Moore or Debo if Ayuk gets traded. I don't love Debo if Ayuk stays. So by the time you have your draft, hopefully we know if Ayuk is staying or leaving. And if all those guys are gone, I honestly don't mind going elite quarterback here either, just because this range is kind of murky. I don't love the values that I'm seeing. I don't love Malik Neighbors here in round 3 if you got to reach for a guy. Yeah, I would have no problem taking Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen if he's here, or Jalen Hurts. So like I said, starting wide receiver is risky because I don't like the running back values here unless Pacheco falls to you, which is going to be unlikely. So what I think is the smartest build, again, based on what platform you draft on, based on your league mates, there's some variables that I can't really talk about because I don't know. I don't know what platform you're drafting on. These are based on sleepers ADPs, but if you're drafting on Yahoo or ESPN or whatever it is, that's why you have to do mock drafts, to get an idea of who's going to be available so you can decide on what positions you need to take in rounds 1, rounds 2. I think that thought process is very underrated. I think a lot of people are just kind of go in like, oh, whatever, and then they run into a situation where they're like, oh, I need a wide receiver in this round, and there's either no one here that I like or I'm going to have to reach for someone, and that's just bad practice. You do have a third option. If you want to go 0 RB strategy, if that's your plan, you do it. You could start off A.J. Brown, Drake London, and Jalen Waddle could be your first 3 picks. In this spot, I don't mind going 0 RB just because it is a little bit tricky to maneuver. 0 RB isn't my preference, but if that's what you've done in the past and it's worked for you, I think if you have a pick between 9 and 12, this is your best opportunity to do it. I mean, starting A.J. Brown, Drake London, Jalen Waddle, are you kidding me? Like, that's insane wide receiver core right there. And then you attack RB late in rounds. You could then get your elite quarterback in round 4. Go get C.J. Stroud. That's also an option. I like to give you guys options because I understand that it's not going to always fall. The draft's not always going to fall the way we think it is. Everyone's league's different. Everyone's draft's different. So I want to give you guys I want to throw different scenarios, different options at you to help you be the most prepared that you possibly can be. If you were to ask me what's your ideal start if you had to choose, I would say it's Garrett Wilson in round 1, Saquon Barkley in round 2, and then Jalen Waddle in round 3. That would be my perfect start here. All right, in round 4, I've talked about this in all the previous picks. It is the wide receiver goldmine. I don't care where you're drafting from. You should have a shot at getting one of these guys, which is DK Metcalf, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Smith. If you don't want one of those wide receivers, let's say you took 3 wide receivers to start the draft, go elite quarterback or go Trey McBride. I have no problem taking an elite tight end, but this spot offers crazy wide receiver value. And if you want to secure your RB2, if you haven't done that yet, you have options. Kenneth Walker, who I think is going to be a league winner, and Alvin Kamara, who I think is going to survive on volume, pass down, red zone work. In round 5, we're going to call it take value or need. If you don't have your quarterback yet, Anthony Richardson usually falls in this spot in round 5, who has quarterback 1 overall upside. So if you want to take a running quarterback, do that here with Anthony Richardson. If you need a tight end, Kyle Pitts is having a career year this year. Don't be afraid to take Kyle Pitts. But if you want to keep loading up on wide receivers, T. Higgins is probably going to have a bounce back year, and Amari Cooper is a great value at this spot. In round 6, though, if you're the guy that, you're just like, I'm just going to go as many wide receivers as I want, take an elite quarterback, maybe take an elite tight end, you could hypothetically go wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end. Like, this is a 0 RB strategy. And then take your RB1 in round 6, which is James Conner, who I love, Ramondre Stevenson, who I love, Aaron Jones, not as excited about, but a quality guy here, DeAndre Swift, David Montgomery. Conner and Stevenson would be my 2 favorite options. But if you need a quarterback, I'm totally fine with going Joe Burrow, who is going to explode this year. But in round 7, if you pass up on Burrow, I love to take Kyler Murray, Jordan Love. Round 7 is typically where I take a quarterback, unless I use the 0 RB strategy or, I'm targeting CJ Stroud or Anthony Richardson. If not, I almost always go quarterback in round 7. In round 8, if you passed up on Andrews or McBride earlier, you could take your tight end 1 here, which for me would be Jake Ferguson, who I think has top 5 upside at the position this season, or David Njoku, who ended last season on absolute fire. Yes, that was with Joe Flacco, but maybe Deshaun Watson finally realizes what Njoku is capable of and just feeds the man. That could potentially happen. Or you chase upside with some of these younger guys who could absolutely smash. Ladd McConkey, Jonathan Brooks, who I think is going to be a league winner in December. In round 9, you continue to chase upside and target my 2 favorite breakout wide receivers, which is Jackson Smith-Njigba or Christian Watson. If you do anything in any of your drafts, leave your draft with either JSN or Christian Watson, and you can thank me later. If you don't want to target those guys, I love Tyjae Spears here, Brian Robinson Jr. If you waited on quarterback, Jaden Daniels is the best late round quarterback in drafts this season. And in round 10, you continue to chase upside. If Spears is still there, or Brian Robinson, or Daniels, take one of those guys. If not, Chase Brown I love in Cincinnati, or Blake Corum. If Kyron goes down, Corum could be absolutely insane. And then don't leave the end of any of your drafts without taking Rico Dowdle in round 13, 14. I think he's going to be Dallas's RB1 and just be an absolute monster because Zeke is just that much older. And I do think Rico is actually a pretty good running back. So your final roster could look something like this. Kyler Murray, Saquon Barkley, James Conner, Garrett Wilson. Listen to these wide receivers. Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, DK Metcalf, T. Higgins, David Njoku at tight end, Brian Robinson Jr. You can build a filthy team from picks 9 to 12. Don't let anyone tell you that you can't. There's so many good options. Let me know what you're thinking from this spot. Comment down below. Let's all help each other out. Everyone comment what pick you have, what you're thinking. Let's build a bunch of winners this season. I want to help you guys win your league more than anything. I've lost my voice at this point. I don't know how long this video is going to be. I just went through every single pick in as much detail as I possibly could, catered specifically for you guys to help you win. It was a lot of work, but it was worth it. There will be this exact format for 10-team leagues. So if you're in a 10-team league and you're like, what? I'm bummed out. Subscribe, hit the notifications, like this video, and comment down below, hey, I'm in a 10-man league. I want to see this format, just so I know that there's enough interest to go through and put in the work to make another one of these videos, which I'm going to do. It's probably going to be a couple days, but comment down below if you want to see it. And that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.